Greetings, comrades. My name is Gigantles, and it's really been a long time since I last wore a pair of headphones for a video. But this video is a requested video that someone who follows my Facebook page asked me to look at. They said they wanted me to look at a video by a YouTube channel called Return to Tradition, and how apparently a dark Marian prophecy has been fulfilled. They were quite concerned about its contents, and so I said, okay, I'll go look at it. Unfortunately, a number of technical issues occurred, which meant that I couldn't record anything or do much about the video until, well, technically yesterday. I mean, I already watched the video and I have a book of notes that I'll look at throughout. And I tried to record a review of this video yesterday. The problem was that I didn't want to initially, when I recorded the video, I didn't want to make a video where I would be just watching the video with you guys and then adding my commentary in, because the original video is almost half an hour long, and I thought, well, that's going to be too long. Well, yesterday taught me that unfortunately it's quite difficult to get the flow of the video going if I don't have anything to really refer to, you know, the original video. And I ended up hurting my throat because I ended up speaking for over an hour because I kept losing my place. So what's going to happen is, apart from just this now and maybe the end of the video, you're going to see me in the corner of the screen, like with my old gaming videos, and we'll watch this video together. I've already watched the video, so I know what's in it and have my book of notes to look through, and I'll give commentary when necessary. So yeah, I might as well just get started. But before I begin, this YouTuber, I've seen some of their content being promoted in some of my groups that it's in groups that are either have a strong radtrad or restorationist presence, or it's in groups that, well, it's in groups like sounds like trad nonsense but okay, you know, that sort of stuff. This video in question, it mainly centers around two things. One, the apparent rise of neo-paganism in Italy, and two, a sedevacantist document that compiles a number of Marian prophecies and quotes from saints in order to try and link the two together to say that the church is in apostasy, or Rome is in apostasy and stuff. I'll get round into the finer details as we get through the video. So I'm just gonna start playing, and we'll go from there.
I'm a little testy this morning because I recorded a video for this weekend on a subject that comes up every Lent, and it was one of those that gets under my skin every year. You'll see it on Saturday. That's all I can say. But we're going to talk about the fulfillment of a prophecy here. In fact, it's a fulfillment of several prophecies.
Okay, so technically it's already false advertising.
Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of Antichrist.
No, it will not, and I'll explain that in a minute.
The first half of that appears to have been fulfilled.
No, it hasn't. It really hasn't. I realize maybe I'm making this commentary a bit too quick. I'll try and... It's going to be quite hard to edit this. I'm going to try and delay my commentary, so it's not as frequent.
Rome will lose the faith. Now, it comes from Our Lady of La Salette, the suppressed portion of it that came to light in the 1990s when somebody found it in the Vatican archives.
Ooh, he really does not know his history. Let me give you some history regarding the La Salette messages. So, I may get the years wrong, I apologize. In 1846, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to two shepherd children in La Salette. These were Maximilian and Melanie. And in 1851, I believe it was, the bishop managed to convince the two children to write down, well, at that point in time, they had already revealed what was meant to be the general message to the rest of the Catholic Church. But each of the children, in addition to that, received a private message, or a secret. And in 1851, the bishop convinced both of those children to write down their secret message, so that it could then be given to the Pope in Rome for a sort of your eyes only situation. Okay. So in 1851 they wrote these messages, and they sent them off to Rome, and they remained in Rome, effectively in the Vatican archives, unread by anyone else, for almost 150 years. Maximilian died sometime before 1870, I think, but he really hated the attention he was getting, as a result of the Marian apparition, and so he would often make some really ludicrous claims about his secret, just to try and push people away, which I can understand. He wasn't a fan of publicity, such as one of the things he claimed that was in his message was that he would become a millionaire. He didn't, obviously. Melanie, on the other hand, her fame went to her head big time. She joined a convent at some point, and on a number of occasions, she was told not to reveal her identity to anyone. But she would do this, and she would be moved around to different convents, and she was a serial liar. I can't remember where it was specifically. I may try and find the link later. But I once read I believe it's a biography of hers, where someone said that she would sometimes have all of her religious sisters and other people sit around her, and then she would go on these elaborate tales about her past. And there was one tale which involved her as a child, where she would go into the forest and befriend all the animals, and it wouldn't be like a mass or anything, but they would have almost a religious service with her, or a religious parade, where they would follow her and listen to her as she spoke. And even apparently the wolves would carry a cross with them. But this was proven to be false by the fact that Melanie was irreligious as a child, and so she was just making this up on the spot. And then I can't remember when I can't remember again when this specific event happened, but when new religious orders were established at La Salette, Melanie believed that she had the authority to determine what the religious sisters there would wear, and the rules that they would follow. The bishop of the diocese rebuked her, and the Pope had a personal audience with her in which he asked her to not overstep her boundaries. In response to this, in 1873, Melanie wrote down what she claimed was the secret that she had received at La Salette, that she wanted to release to the general public. There was one problem with this, however. The original secret that she had written in 1851 was one piece of paper, back and sides, well, back and front. This new secret that she had written was an entire pamphlet. It was significantly longer. And in 1876, she finally got round to publishing this, despite her bishop warning her not to. And this message, or this particular secret, this one that she had written in the 1870s, is the one that claims Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. Because Melanie had disobeyed her bishop, the Vatican then barred her from writing any more documents in 1880. And Melanie would then spend the rest of her life wandering around France, demanding that she be paid her dues I can't remember what it was, as a saint or a visionary or something, but she basically went into apostasy, in which she would attack the magisterium. She would claim that she had been receiving messages, and she was not exactly the most mentally stable of people. She eventually, I think she died in 1906 or something. Now, in 1922, someone got their hands on the pamphlet that she had published, and they decided to republish it in a new edition. In 1923, the Vatican got their hands on this new edition of the leaflet, and they added it. Not only did they condemn it, but they also added it. Onto the index of prohibited books. So it was pretty severe. The contents of this apocryphal secret. And although the index has since been dissolved, I believe it was Pope Benedict XVI said that the condemnation of the books that were on it is still in effect because of their contents. Now, in 1999, the original messages that the Pope had received from Melanie and Maximilian were released to the public, and there's a brilliant website. It's one of the it's on. I think it's called Arcane Knowledge. I'll provide the link for it in the description. It provides the text of both Maximilian and Melanie's messages, and not only that, but it also provides photographs that were taken of both the letters of the secret and also the envelopes that they were received in order to authenticate them. And if you read the original messages from Salette that the Vatican had received in the 1850s, it sounds like they were written by children. whereas the message that was promoted by Melanie in the 1870s sounds like someone had read too much apocalyptic literature. So this whole claim of so what this YouTuber said about how the Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. No, that was not the secret that was kept in the Vatican until the 1990s. That was the secret that was placed on the index of prohibited books, so it was to an extent suppressed, but it was suppressed because it was a fake. It was made in direct it was published in direct violation of the bishop and the Vatican, who had told her to behave herself. So it's unfortunate that most people don't know this, and I have seen people promoting the whole Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist, but it goes to show that they haven't done their proper research when it comes to La Salette. And as I said, it is unfortunate because the actual secret, almost no one knows about it. I have the text and I have the pictures that I probably showed you, but very few people know about it, unfortunately. Anyway, this has been a bit of a long piece of commentary. Back to the video.
But people debate what it means. Instead of a contest, more strident traditionalists will somehow link it to the Vatican becoming the seat of Antichrist, suggesting a pope is the Antichrist. The church has said a Roman pontiff will not be the Antichrist, although the church has remained silent on whether a man the world accepts as pope can be the false prophet. I'll leave you to do with that what you will, but
that's an incredibly malicious statement. The best way to describe the relationship between the false prophet and the Antichrist is that of Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels. You had the leader, and then you had the propaganda arm. And a similar situation with the Antichrist, who's the leader, and the false prophet, who's meant to be supporting the Antichrist through various false prophecies and stuff. But we can expect that the false prophet, in addition to making false prophecies, would also be promoting heresy at the same time. And thanks to Saint Bellarmine's reasoning, we know that the Pope cannot become a heretic, and that God would never raise a heretic to the position of Pope. So this is an incredibly malicious statement here, where he tries to say that just because the Vatican doesn't confirm something, it means that it is a possibility. In actuality, no. The Pope cannot become the Antichrist or the false prophet.
Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of Antichrist. For that to be fulfilled, it requires at least a couple of things. One, of course, being the people of Rome, meaning the people of Italy, losing the faith. And for it to become the seat of Antichrist sounds like...
He does make a point here. When people talk about how Rome will lose the faith, something that a lot of people seem to neglect is that the Vatican City, or the Vatican, is not the same thing as Rome. I mean, maybe back at the time of the prophecy of La Salette, but Napoleon would, Napoleon would invade the Vatican City. Well, Napoleon would invade the Papal States, and then the Kingdom of Italy would come up in its place. And at that point in time, it was known as the Pope. The Pope was known as the prisoner in the Vatican, in which he felt that he couldn't leave the Vatican City because all of his territories were gone, absorbed by the state of Italy. So there does need to be a differentiation made between the state of Italy, the Vatican City, the state of the Vatican City, and then just the Vatican.
So there could be some sort of political machinations that happen that become fulfilled, involving essentially the supernatural, right? We're talking about the man of sin, the Antichrist. But if the faith, when you say Rome or Vatican will lose the faith, like that's what I'm saying here. When people debate what this means, is it Rome or will the Vatican? People debate it. It's not clear. But if it were to be the Holy See, and it's not unreasonable to...
It is very, very unreasonable.
Suggest that the man of sin would take the Vatican and use it as his seat. In fact, Pope...
Okay, see, now you see what I'm talking about. He's talking about the... Oh, sorry, that was a weird thing to pause it at. See, this is what I mean. He's talking about the difference between the Antichrist becoming the Pope, and then the Antichrist taking the Vatican and presumably driving out the Pope, where the Pope then goes somewhere else. This is what I'm talking about. People need to make this differentiation like he just did here. Cheers.
Some Catholic theologians, the church fathers, all of them say that in the end times, the church will be driven underground, held together by remnant clergy and a handful of bishops, perhaps a pope underground.
This is an incredibly dangerous position to hold because, well, firstly, you need to look at the other writings of these church fathers. Many of the church fathers, well, I can't remember who the last church father was, but the period of time that we generally see as the church father period is the first. No, that's the apostolic. The apostolic fathers were the 1st to 2nd centuries, and then the church fathers were the 2nd century to the 8th century, I believe. The problem was back then there were a lot of overly literal interpretations of Revelation. Some people believed that Christ would return before the year 1000 AD, for example, and so we have to be careful when it comes to looking at the quotes from the church fathers and just the traditional approach of the church, because it's not always going to be correct, especially since we're still here. But it's also dangerous to talk about the church being driven underground and held together by a remnant clergy and an underground pope, because then that leads to then that allows for the possibility of various anti-pope factions, and that's something we really don't need, especially after the whole Western schism situation.
That for a time it will look like the faith has disappeared from the earth. Even our Lord hints at this: when I return, will I find faith? The extent of that is what people debate. Well, let's talk about this now, because Catholic Herald comes to us with this story. Headline: Italian Catholics reverting to ancient Roman gods, seers, and sorcerers. Look, it's not a stretch to say that if for the just straightforward words of Our Lady of La Salette and numerous others, Cardinal Manning, Pope Pius X and XII, I think, both said things on this.
I'll look at all those later. Just give him some time.
As well as other Marian apparitions and private revelations in general. For this to happen, you need this to happen bare minimum. This story,
I would say that it would have to happen on a much larger scale than this bare minimum.
When I read this in preparation for this, is actually incredible. It's an open secret that across Europe, low percentages of Catholics attend Mass every single day, or every weekend, every Sunday. That I'm 5 years ago, in 2019, my wife and I hosted an exchange student from Denmark, I think it was. She came from a Vietnamese Catholic family, but they were living in Denmark. She spoke Dutch more than Vietnamese. And we were told by the exchange hosting organization that she came from a Catholic family who practiced the faith. She got here, we discovered that we were way too rigid for her because we went to Mass every Sunday. She told us that her family we're Catholic, we go to Mass once a month. That's actually what practicing the faith has come to mean in much of Europe. That was our wake-up call on this. Very few Catholics attend Mass on a regular basis in Italy and elsewhere. Remember that as we go over this. Published just yesterday at Catholic Herald. A startling number of lapsed Catholics, there's your word there, lapsed Catholics in Italy are reverting to the deities of...
Though before we all start panicking about these statistics, I think we should note that although we do like to brag about how there are 1.4 billion Catholics across the world, let's be honest, most of them are not devout. A significant portion of them will not be devoutly practicing and stuff. Even when we look at these statistics here, even if there is a rise in neo-paganism, we'll find that there's probably a very, very small percentage of these neo-pagans that are actually devout towards their neo-pagan practices, and most of these neo-pagans are actually very shallow. And if given the opportunity, or rather given proper evangelization and education efforts, they would convert to Catholicism or reconvert back to Catholicism quite easily. Unfortunately, this is the quality of the education system across the West lately, unfortunately.
Of ancient Rome and turning to pagan seers, astrologers, psychics, attesting to a potentially catastrophic collapse of Catholicism and its
Actually, you know what this reminds me of? Now, when when I eat meals with my family, because I'm the only practicing Catholic in my family, I'm outnumbered when it comes to what people choose to watch on TV. And a couple of months ago, my family were watching the series, well, they were watching the franchise Modern Family, and you know the South American, the Colombian, Gloria. Um, this reminds me of her situation, where on one episode she was super insistent on trying to baptize her great grandchildren against the in secret without letting the parents of her great grandchildren know. Yeah, trying to claim to be a devout Catholic, and then in another episode, she went to a psychic or fortune teller to try and get her predictions. Yeah, the media don't like to portray us very accurately, do they?
traditional bastion. Over 160,000 sorcerers are doing brisk business in the dark arts and similar practices, with over 3 million Italians consulting the so called Mad Guy every year for advice. This involves shelling out an astronomical 8 billion euros, according to data from Osservatorio Antiplagio. Between 10 to 13 million Italians, almost all of them baptized Catholics, had turned to sorcerers or other practitioners at least once in their lives, while 30,000 Italians from all classes of society seek out psychics and visionaries daily in a quest for a better future, the Kodokan agency says. The epicenter of the dark arts is in the Lombardy region of northern Italy.
This reminds me of a map I once saw. Well, one map in a compilation of maps about Italy. I think it was talking about the different ways to divide Italy, and so it would say, like, weather-wise, politics-wise, economically-wise, and when it came to religion-wise, it said, northern Italy, like, blasphemous, southern Italy, devout, and then Vatican City highlighted as the Pope. I guess this sort of provides a bit more background to it.
2,800 such operators and 200,000 clients. Numbers that far exceed the percentage of resident Catholic priests and Catholics who attend Holy Mass on a weekly basis. A survey conducted in 2023 by market research company SWG found that 34% of Italians believe or engage in communication with the dead, 24% in other forms of dark arts, and including 19% in predicting the future with cards, 18% in so-called white magic. Oh, sorry, I hit my computer there. And 17% dealing with psychic and other types of people who claim to be able to lay on hands.
It should probably also be noted that most of these apparent sorcerers and occultists are probably just scammers, and that the real number of those who are actually using some form of magic or demonic energies, whatever, is a fraction of that. But let's just continue.
Let's pause here for a second. This stuff doesn't just come out of the blue. This has been a problem brewing for a very, very, very long time. And why does this happen? It's because, frankly, the church has stopped standing up to the world. When you see this constant preaching of dialoguing with the world, and we saw this with the stonecutter issue, right? That we need to dialogue, and there's never a call to repentance. And when you see bishops talking about Jesus being the privileged path to salvation, instead of our Lord saying that he was the way, the truth, and the life, that no one comes to the Father except through him. When you see this putting of pagan idols in Catholic parishes, going back to 1988, the Assisi, right in front of the Pope.
Yeah, of course he mentions the Assisi meeting. Yeah, I'll probably make a video or something about that to explain it a bit more in depth, as well as the Pachamama one, because I've got a bone to pick with people who talk about the Pachamama incident, and I really want to point out their lack of academic research in the process. But those are 4 other videos. Let's just continue.
Pagan idol put on a put on a tabernacle. People adored the thing right in front of the Holy Father. When you see this stuff, imagine if you, it looks like the church has at least no integrity anymore, that it doesn't stand for anything. If it doesn't stand for anything, it cannot give you anything, especially any guidance on the truth. And this is especially true when the church refuses to take
Thank you.
stands on hard issues of the day, even unpopular ones. For some reason, the prelates of the church have gotten this idea in their head that if we don't take a hard stand on the Moloch ritual or what have you, whatever thing is in vogue, right?
The Molech ritual. Really? Yeah. I think in my notes I said that this was his way of referring to abortion, but the Molech ritual, it's a misapplication or a misattribution of the name Molech to abortion, because when it came to the worship of Molech, Molech was associated with infanticide, where you would heat up a metal statue of him until it was red hot. Then you would place a child in its arms or in a special alcove on it, and then they would burn alive. That's infanticide, not abortion. But continue.
Right now, if the church doesn't take a firm stand against it, and instead kind of waffles and goes with the flow, that the church will have people wanting to enter the church and go to mass and come to know our Lord. Instead, the opposite happens. If you can know our Lord from anywhere or even outside of, broadly speaking, Christianity, then why would I be a member of the hardest form of Christianity? Any apostolic form of Christianity is a far harder way of calling yourself a Christian than praise and worship Protestantism or the me and Jesus, buddy Jesus, non-denominational, quote-unquote Christianity, where you just sort of make it up as you go along and rely on your own personal papal power to interpret what the Bible says is okay. And even if you don't even have to acknowledge Christ to be saved, well, why bother? What's the point? That's the message that's getting sent.
I think it should be noted that you're probably going to blame the clergy for this and talk about how it's bad priests and stuff, but there was a survey that came out, I think a few months ago, maybe last year. It said that of all the men entering the clergy nowadays, it's not like back when it was it's not like how it has been for the last few decades, in which you had very progressive men entering the clergy, and so promoting their progressive beliefs and leading to general apostasy of people who are getting misled about the faith. But nowadays there are more men holding the traditional beliefs of the Catholic Church, and so we should start to see a sort of revival when it comes to Catholicism on the local level, and that is something to look forward to in the upcoming decades. We just need to help maintain the momentum.
And it's funny because you're about to see Francis. This was too much even for him.
Pope Francis, not Francis. Pope Francis.
Francis actually tried speaking out against this stuff. I wish he would do it more stridently. But here, let's go back. Quote, in 2019, Pope Francis warned Italians, quote, not to seek happiness by following smoke vendors, who are often vendors of death, experts in illusion, a reference that was interpreted by Italian media as a caution against a proliferation of these dark arts practitioners. A year later, the Holy Father reiterated his admonition in his Epiphany homily, urging his flock not to follow magicians, fortune tellers, or sorcerers, lest you risk becoming idol addicts. Where's this guy been? Why can't we get more of this?
Probably because his statements have been cherry-picked by the media. I mean, we know they cherry-pick his media. I mean, we know that the media cherry-picks his statements. Okay? Remember, this is the same pope that people thought would promote various forms of marriage and relationships. And there's another article, I can't remember where it is, but I can't remember the name of the company that have made it, but there's an article which says the politically incorrect Pope Francis, and then it has 14 quotes of Pope Francis, in which he displays that he does not care about politics or political correctness. You know, both the progressives and the radtrads like to cherry pick his content, often for the same intention, to portray him as a progressive, in order to promote their own personal agendas. But this is what happens when cherry picking of his quotes go on. I cover this a lot with my refutations of the lay pope.
On other things, instead of playing nice, because all of these good words are completely undone when he accepts the praises of stonecutters. When he brings in secular authorities who want you to engage in the worship of creation. As my video today, my news video is going live in about 40 minutes from the time this is going live.
I know that the three, okay, not necessarily ministries, but there are three entities that I have refuted on my Facebook page, Gigantic Apologetics, and they are Genesis in China, Apologia Anglicana, and the Lay Pope. I've dedicated months of my time into looking at every one of their articles that's relevant, really, and refuting them. I have no intention of doing something similar with this guy and looking through every one of his videos and refuting them in a similar manner, because that's going to take up way too much time. Okay, so if you guys ask me about his other videos, I haven't watched any of his other videos, and I don't have any desire to just sit there and watch every one of them, make a response to every one of them and stuff. Okay, if you want me to look at specific videos, I'm fine with that. Just don't expect me to go to in-depth analyze the claims of this channel, because there are better ways I can be spending my time and effort and focus on other things.
We'll show you. It all gets undone because occasionally he says some really good stuff like this, but it gets undone by his actions. Let's keep going. In an Angelus address in July 2023, last summer, the pontiff cautioned Catholics to reject beliefs, quote, in superstitions such as magic, cards, horoscopes, and other similar things, noting that, quote, many Christians go to have their palms read, which you should not be doing. Don't do that stuff. Recent figures confirm the findings of a doctoral thesis submitted by Stefano Filippi in the University of Bergamo, 2012, titled Education, Religious Diversity, and Non-Religious Belief, which demonstrated that it is no longer the Catholic religion dominating Italy, but religious diversity and non-religious beliefs in the increasingly pluralistic Italian context.
Which is, of course, a tragedy in itself.
That's a fancy, I spent way too much time in grad school way of saying anything but Catholicism. Meanwhile, in a parallel phenomenon, Italians disenchanted by the church are claiming they have found an authentic spirituality by returning to their roots and reclaiming the pagan gods of ancient Rome. The Via Romana Agli Dei, Roman Road to the Gods, is a religious movement comprising various neo-pagan groups declaring themselves to be part of the European Congress of Ethnic Religions. Practitioners of the Roman way argue that even though their ancestors were persecuted after the doomed and execrable Second Edict of Theodosius in 392, their rituals survive more overtly in rural Italy and secretly in upper-class Italian culture.
You know who this sounds like? Not him, but the article. You know who these neo-pagans sound like? Protestants and fundamentalists and Baptists. I mean, Baptists are Protestants, but I know they like to classify themselves differently. They followed the exact same line of reasoning, saying that after the Roman Catholics came along and Saint Constantine created the Catholic Church in the Council of Nicaea, there was the true church was driven underground, and then they somehow remained hidden for almost 1300 years before finally appearing, and it's just their way of saying we have no historical evidence, so we're just going to assume we were always there, and just that you couldn't see us. It's of course a ridiculous ahistorical argument to make. This also reminds me, and I need to make a video about this. I tried making videos about this, but the recording always went wrong. About the time when I argued with a neo-pagan from Norse mythology who followed the Nordic Norse paganism, how even among the Norse neo-pagans, there are cults among them that are so ahistorically ahistorical that those Norse pagans will shun them. And you know it's bad if your beliefs are so ahistorical, even the neo-pagans reject you from their number. But let's just back to the article.
Well, several of these demons survived allegedly in Catholic guise as many goddesses are masked behind very specific Madonnas. See, again, here, you see this. This is one of the lies that we keep being told, that the church just dressed up Jupiter or Venus or whatever in the saints, and people.
Yeah, he's right. This is definitely sounding like fundamentalist nonsense. It also reminds me of, what was it? There's something I was gonna say. Yeah, I think I did. I think in one of my videos where I refuted anti-Catholic memes, I was looking at a couple of memes where they apparently showed the Madonna and Child at like Cologne Cathedral, and then he compared it to an older version of the Madonna and Child, but someone claimed that it was Semiramis and Tamuth. And I said no, that's from some German museum, and I managed to locate all of these different Madonna and Child's icons, and I proved that it wasn't just rehashed pagan stuff. If a culture is inherently anti-Christian, or it supports philosophies that are against Christianity, then people will be naturally more inclined to follow these conspiracies that make their life more convenient than they are than they are to follow the truth, which requires not only more effort to understand, but also leads to conclusions that are less convenient for them.
People believe it because the church doesn't do the education it needs to anymore.
Oh yeah, by the way, with Dante, I can understand what they mean by Dante, because I do have the Divine Comedy, and that's actually, let me get that down quickly. Please do not fall. Do not fall. I have a Madonna and Child statue up there. Do not fall. Yeah, I've got my own copy of the Divine Comedy, and there is a lot of pagan themes in this, but it's done in such a way. Oh, that's a bit dusty. There are a number of pagan themes in this, but it's not done in praise of paganism. Sometimes it's in the context of praising pagans for virtues that they expressed in their lives, but to claim that Dante was some form of like a pagan supporter is ridiculous. Anyway,
this is how this happens. It says poets like Dante kept memory of the Roman tradition and apparent syncretism with Christianity. What a load of nonsense. Let's pause here. The Catholic Church has always preserved culture. The reason we know about Thor and these other, things now owned as intellectual property by Disney of all people, the reason we know about them, the reason that their memory persists is because the church thought it was important to the cultures of those places to remember their heritage, where they came from.
Another really good example of this is in the case of Easter. People like to claim that Easter is nothing more than a continuation of the pagan festival or celebration of this old pagan goddess Easter. But Easter only exists in one primary source, and that is in the works of Saint Bede the Venerable, who is known as the father of English history. And he only mentions her in passing, and how that I think it was the month of April or something, was associated with Easter because of how it represented the renewal of, through spring, of the countryside and everything. But we only have one reference to her. We have absolutely no mention by him of any of her symbols or any specific days of celebration of her, and anyone who claims otherwise is being ahistorical in their claims.
Even if they no longer practice devotion to those things. And people don't know that much. They know so very little now, because the church is being engaged in this aggiornamento, this dialogue with the world.
The problem isn't, I should probably say this now, the problem isn't that we're having dialogue, it's that we're having dialogue without there also being a parallel affirmation of Catholic beliefs. It's like if you're fighting, you can't just have your sword out. You need to have both a sword and a shield, because if you just have your sword out, then you're inevitably going to get hit. And if you only have your shield out, you're not going to be able to attack effectively. So you need to both have a sword, a sword and a shield in order to both fight and defend yourself properly.
And this is what we're dealing with now. People are returning to this nonsense instead of the faith. And now this comes, I want to see where some of the roots of this in prophecy. I mean, let's take a look at this.
Oh, here we go.
Hold on here. I'm going to make sure I actually open the right tab here. Yeah, okay. My options here looked a little weird. So, This was done. This is a pamphlet put together by a traditional parish somewhere. Um, I know that some people won't like some of what you're about to hear, but there is a common thread in approved private revelation, meaning
Approved, you say? Okay.
it's not a matter of faith that you have to believe this stuff generally, but it's you're open to accept this as real as under certain circumstances. Although, as I have spoken about with a guest before, the church has ruled definitively that certain private revelations, specifically Marian apparitions, that are of sufficiently public nature, including their message being pertinent to the general public, to deny those is actually blasphemous.
This sounds maybe I just haven't found the you just haven't found the specific thing yet. But this sounds like he's trying to guilt trip us, or just or blackmail us into accepting what he's about to say, without questioning it, because otherwise we would be committing blasphemy against the Blessed Virgin Mary.
It comes like right up to that line of the private versus public. You can't just ignore Fatima. In other words.
Okay, so he's saying it's almost blasphemous, right? Doesn't really help, but okay.
Because because what's the substance of the Fatima message? What's the substance of La Salette and the good event of the purification and these other Marian apparitions? It's repent, do acts of penance, because God is angry at the sinful state of man. To deny that is blasphemy, because that's a constant.
But there's a difference between not accepting. Sorry, I'll talk after I finish. There is a difference between accepting the theology behind Marian apparitions as opposed to accepting the Marian apparitions themselves. So I'm not sure if he's trying to make if he's trying to falsely equate the two here, but you are meant to accept the whole, repent and atone for your sins. But that doesn't mean you have to accept all the Marian apparitions which also claim that.
The teaching of the church going back to antiquity. Let's go over this document. It says, the great apostasy. Were we warned? Have we been told by whom, when, why? Various works have been written about the errors of Vatican II and the false popes. Again, this is from a Sedevacantist thing, so we're going to skip past a lot of this.
Convenient, isn't it? I mean, oh man, I really hope my fan isn't too loud. There are times where you can use the literature of heretics and schismatics in order to support an argument of yours. For instance, a bunch of my biblical archaeology, a lot of my research for biblical archaeology comes from Protestants who absolutely hate Catholics. But you can look through their interpretations against us, especially when it doesn't specifically apply to us Catholics, and still see the original information that they obtained and use that for your own case. Okay, I am fine. I can do that quite well. But this is incredibly dangerous because he's using Sedevacantist piece of literature and using their interpretations as well in order to try and prove the whole radtrad / restorationist movements semi-schismatic position from the church, or just the apparently corrupt magisterium and everything else they claim, which I can go into more details about. I don't need to go into it here. You're going to see just how far this can go. That's the wrong button.
But they're not wrong here on a lot. The reader may be surprised to note this great falling away is one of the most predicted events in history. These predictions or prophecies are found in or derived from revelation, of which there are two kinds, divine and private. Divine revelation is to be found in sacred scripture and the Catholic Church's deposit of faith. This revelation ended with the apostles and are infallibly certain. Therefore, as divinely revealed truth, they must be believed by all. And of course, private revelation is an inspiration. Go over what private revelation is. Let's just actually go over to what some of this is. So, warnings from the great Mother of God.
Hold on, can I
actually go over to what some of this is? So,
I was just seeing what he just skipped over.
Warnings from the great Mother of God, Mary Most Holy. They call her Our Lady of Good Success because
Actually, I'll let him talk first.
This is an English language thing. Outside of the English world, you don't get her getting called Our Lady of Good Success. Her title is some translated version of Our Lady of the Good Event of the Purification, which has an entirely different connotation. And if you've watched my videos on that, that name makes more sense than Good Success.
So the Sedevacantists can't do their own research. Okay, fair enough.
And this is one of those things I stick to, and it really sticks in my craw, because I have seen Our Lady of Good Success used as a sort of Joel Osteen kind of Marian devotion, and it really bugs me. But anyway, in the early 17th century, Conceptionist nun in Ecuador, Mother Mariana de Jesus Torres, was the recipient of various apparitions from the Mother of God, including many prophecies concerning the 20th century. The fact that these prophecies date back 400 years makes them especially noteworthy. Mother Mariana's
There are a number of problems with this that I will cover after he covers this. I'm going to bring in my own stuff. Okay.
corrupt body was discovered in 1906 and can still be seen today. And here's from Our Lady. Thus I make it known to you that from the end of the 19th century and shortly after the middle of the 20th century, it will be difficult to receive the sacrament of baptism and also that of confirmation. The Catholic spirit will rapidly decay. The precious light of the faith will be gradually extinguished. Let's pause there. You remember how a couple of years...
Actually, I'm going to start doing it now. So, firstly, she's not a canonized saint. Her calls for canonization only opened up in 1986. This apparition has not actually been approved by Rome, only by the local bishop. We have next to no information about the visionary, except information mostly biased in her favor. We have severe concern about the authenticity of her messages, because we have no original documents of the messages that are attributed to this apparition. The oldest document that we have comes about almost a century after the apparition ceased. So, when it comes to these specific mentions about the 19th and 20th centuries, we should be extremely doubtful about that. We have no reason to believe that that is the actual wording of the original apparition's messages. What else? Oh yeah, in regards to the apparent approval of this. Although there was a canonical consecration of the statue relating to this apparition in 1986, it's not actually a sign of approval of the apparition, only recognition that there was a great devotion and recourse to the apparition. An apparent extinguishing of faith. That sounds very apocalyptic, and very supporting of the Sedevacantist position, which, I mean, this doesn't even support the whole concept of the remnant clergy surviving if the faith will be extinguished, because to use the specific wording extinguished sounds like a complete extinction of the Catholic faith. Okay, it's not a fading or an almost complete destruction. No, it's an extinguished. What else? Oh yeah, the specific wording of this mentions it will be difficult to receive the sacrament, not it will be impossible to receive the sacrament. So, even this seems a bit of a contradiction here.
Years ago, it was like 2020. All of a sudden, people were watching videos of their own baptisms and seeing that the invalid baptismal formula was being used. And dioceses were scrambling to get people conditionally baptized and then all of the sacraments again. Some people think, oh, that's not a big deal. Every time I tell a traditional priest that I hear people say that God knows it's not a big deal, they're appalled. They're absolutely appalled because it's a rejection of the church's authority.
Yeah, there have been a number of instances where people found out that their baptisms have been invalid. And I remember one case of a priest who found out his baptism was invalid, so he had to go get baptized and then reordained a priest. And then he had to go to all of the couples that he had married and remarry them. He had to go to all the people that he had, all the children he had baptized and rebaptize them. And it was just a whole lot of chaos. That's one of the reasons why it's important to have a uniformity in the teaching and expression of the sacraments to prevent that sort of a situation arising again. Because there is a difference between between a sacrament being invalid and then a sacrament being illicit. You know, if it's illicit, then it was performed without permission. If it was invalid, then it wasn't performed how it should have been performed, and so it wouldn't have the mark of the sacrament wouldn't be in effect.
Yes, the sacraments in their form and fidelity to how they're given matter, and they matter a great deal. Sacrament of baptism, and then confirmation. A lot of Catholics never make it to even confirmation; they just walk away.
It should also be noted that the fact that the prophecy specifies there will be difficulty in receiving the sacraments means that the problem wouldn't be with the invalidity of the sacraments, just the reception of them. Maybe because it's just harder, maybe because the church will be isolated, or populations will be isolated from the church, and so they wouldn't be able to receive the sacraments as much. But remember, the difficult to receive the sacraments, not that the sacraments will be invalid.
Let's continue. Various heresies will be propagated in this land, then a free republic. This is Ecuador. As these heresies spread and dominate, the precious light of faith will be extinguished in the souls by the almost total corruption of customs. That would mean things going on in the secular world. The small number of souls who hidden will preserve the treasure of the faith, and the virtues will suffer an unspeakably cruel and slow martyrdom. In the 20th century, the corruption of customs will be almost universal, the precious light of faith all but extinguished. How the church will suffer on that occasion. The dark night of the lack of a prelate and father to watch over them.
Now that is a Sedevacantist prophecy right there. And again, we have no reason to believe that this was actually part of the original message received at the apparition. And so, yeah, again, no reason to trust it. It just supports a Sedevacantist viewpoint.
The lukewarmness of all the souls consecrated to God in the priestly and religious state will delay the coming of this prelate and father. This coming of this prelate and father references the coming of a holy priest of some kind who will essentially restore belief in the Catholic priesthood and inspire Catholic priests to start acting like priests. Some have said that might be Archbishop Lefebvre. Archbishop Lefebvre once gave voice to it, but he also said, just categorically said, he really didn't think it was him. He said,
"Oh, look, so he actually did something right, for once."
Might be, but it's not for him to say. Moving on from there, Our Lady of Lost Salette.
Dear old Salette, which I've already covered. I mean, we can dismiss this because it's relying on an apocryphal. I mean, I know that. Okay, I just broke my freaking book. Great. I know that some of the older documents, when it came to talking about this specific version of the Salette message, they say it should be this message and its apocryphal editions should be dismissed. But given both the size of this newer message and just how radically different it is to the original, I would say that this whole 1873 version of the Salette message itself the entire thing is apocryphal. There's no apocryphal editions. The tone of the letter, the content of the letter, everything about it is completely different.
Happened in 1846 in France. Lucifer, with a great number of demons, will be unchained from hell. By degrees, they abolish the faith even among persons consecrated to God. In every place there will be extraordinary prodigies because the true faith has been extinguished. The abomination will be seen in holy places and convents, and then the demon shall make himself the king of hearts. Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of Antichrist. What is that? What is Rome will lose the faith and become?
And of course, this is all nonsense.
Become the seat of Antichrist? We're not really sure about what this means. But at the very least, this means that the Catholics in that region will stop practicing the faith, and it's already happened.
I say this often when it comes to the lay pope and Apologia Anglicana, when they make an ahistorical or a ridiculous assumption about something and then they run with it for a while. But you can see how ridiculous this argument is, given how you know that the premise it is based upon is already flawed from the beginning.
Probably going to get worse.
Sorry.
Then Our Lady of Fatima. I'm not sure why Sedevacantist website is giving much credence to the third secret of Fatima as given by Rome in 2005.
Yeah, because the Sedevacantists like to argue that the real third secret is kept hidden from the public, and that the real Sister Lucia was locked away somewhere and replaced with an imposter. But this all really goes to show that such individuals who promote that conspiracy, well, it shows the logic of their position, or rather the illogic, in that in order to reach their conclusion, you have to also conclude that that the magisterium is beyond corrupt and is involved in a ridiculous number of massive conspiracies, to the point that the Sedevacantist position would be the only plausible route to follow. Again, there is no reason to believe that the third secret of Fatima is still being hidden. Sister Lucia has confirmed multiple times that it has been released to the public, and let's just continue.
But in Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved. There's usually an etc. there. The etc. is a caveat, and after doing a little digging, those who had spoken with Sister Lucia in the 1950s, up to the 1950s, all said that etc. usually meant that as long as Portugal does not embrace the Moloch ritual, the dogma of the faith will be preserved.
Could you give any sources to this? Just one. Can you give just one source to this claim? Just one.
Portugal has long since embraced it.
No, he cannot. Of course he cannot.
As has the rest of modern civilization. For those of you wondering why Portugal...
And of course, I really hate this term of... I hate the term the Molech ritual, or how the Americans pronounce it, the Moloch ritual. I hate it when they refer to abortion as the Molech ritual, because that's not what the Molech ritual would have been, if you're going to be historically accurate. The Molech ritual was about burning children alive, not killing them in the womb.
Was in such a state, despite the third secret of Fatima's message, it's because of that. There's the Our Lady of Marian, the star of the infernal regions. Lucifer will rage more violently than ever and will cause frightful destruction, because he knows that his time is short, and because he sees that he has already many have gathered around my sign.
Marian Freed is unapproved, although pilgrimages there have been approved, and there has been no authenticated supernatural happenstance? Is that the word? No supernatural happenstance or influence behind it. Yeah, this is the page I just broke off.
My sign being Our Lady's Immaculate Heart. You have various saints. Saint Hippolytus. And the church is too a wail with a mighty lamentation, because neither oblation nor incense is attended to, nor service acceptable to God. Well, that's interesting. But the sanctuaries of the churches will become like a garden watcher's hut, and the holy body and blood of Christ will not be shown in these days. The public service of God shall be extinguished.
Saint Hippolytus of Rome also believed that Christ would return in 500 AD, which for him, or according to his calculation, would be 6,000 years after creation. Saint Hippolytus believed in a very strong literal interpretation of Revelation, going so far as to claim that there would be no more rain and the sea would dry up, and that there would be a literal defeat of the three kings of Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia before the building of a new temple for the Jews to have.
St. Nicholas von Flue, 15th century. The church will be punished because the majority of her members, high and low, will become so twisted. A different word there. The church will sink deeper and deeper until she will at last seem to be extinguished, and the succession of Peter and the other apostles to have expired. But after this, she'll be victoriously exalted in the sight of all doubters.
I cannot find an original reference to this prophecy of his.
This is often attributed by those who take a comprehensive view of Catholic prophecy, like I do, to be that there's a chastisement coming and it will look like the church is gone. The material chastisement, not just the spiritual thing we're going through now, but like the material side of it that most people seem focused on, that it will look like there is no pope, that there is no hierarchy, that it's all been gone away. But then after that will be a miraculous restoration, probably because the handful of cardinals who are around still will find a way to get to one another and will elect a holy pope from among their ranks. That's likely how it's to play out. St. John Bosco, 19th century. He says, of the 20th century, there will be an ecumenical council in the next century, after which there will be chaos in the church.
Misapplying this quote, since the crisis mentioned was also prophesied to end 1 year before the end of the century, which would have been 1999. So this chaos ended 25 years ago by the same saint. Well, according to the same saint.
I said that in 1862.
According to the same saint. I should stop pressing play when I'm talking. Sorry.
I've gone over Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. This is her, This is her prediction of Fatima here in the apparition of the Mother of God, as well as the ape of the church, which I've talked about forever, including the talking about how she saw two popes having a relationship with one another as if they were working together.
Thank you for that clarification.
So it says, when I saw the church of St. Peter in ruins, the manner in which so many of the clergy were themselves busy at the work of destruction, none of them wishing to do so openly in front of others, I was in such distress that I cried out to Jesus with all my might, imploring his mercy. Then I saw before me the heavenly spouse. He said, among other things, that this translation of the church from one place to another meant that she would seem to be in complete decline, but she would rise again even if there remained but one Catholic. The church would conquer again because she does not rest on human counsels and intelligence. Then she goes into the description of the actual ape of the church that I've covered endlessly.
A number of cherry-picked quotes about corruption in the church. The first concern is that the first concern is the actual writings of Blessed Anne Emmerich herself, which is the fact that there are a lot of poor translations from the original German. And if you look at the online forums discussing her writings, there is a lot of confusion based upon these poor translations. Another concern is taking these references to her too literally, because something I found personally was that I'm sure many of us out there love watching the movie The Passion of Christ. It's quite bittersweet, full of suffering, but also full of hope, and a lot of The Passion of Christ was influenced by the writings of Blessed Anne Emmerich. The problem is that not everything she wrote about was historically accurate. And this is something I discovered when trying to basically construct a medical report regarding how Christ suffered in his final 24 hours. So, just we got to be careful about taking some of her references, some of her prophecies too literally. And another concern is how only the Sedevacantists and the Radtrads are the ones analysing this generally, so there will be a lot of bias in the interpretations of these prophecies.
Pope Leo XIII warned about that. He says, these most crafty enemies, those would be the stonecutters, the devils, have filled and inebriated with gall and bitterness the church, meaning they've infiltrated the church, the spouse of the Immaculate Lamb, and have laid impious hands on our most sacred possessions. In the holy place itself, where has been set up the seat of the most holy Peter and the chair of truth for the light of the world, they've raised the throne of their abominable impiety, the iniquitous design that when the pastor has been struck, the sheep may be scattered.
Okay, so this claim here that Saint Pope Leo XIII had a vision on September the 25th in 1886, the one that caused him to compose a prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel. I mean, I really hope my research here is right. It actually happened on the 13th of October in 1884, which was 100 years before the consecration, Pope St. John Paul II's fourth consecration attempt, I believe, of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It better suits Fatima as well, and when you look at the application of when you look at this prophecy and how Satan was promised 75 to 100 years of reduced influence from Christ over the earth, and then the following century of horrors, it would make more sense that this century of horrors would have occurred within 1884 to 1984, and then after 1984, or from 1984 onwards, the Soviet Union began to start cracking apart until eventually it broke apart fully, and the world entered sort of a more peaceful period for a few years. But then, unfortunately, due to the lack of the fulfillment for the first Saturday's devotion, the world is falling back into chaos. And then going back to this reference here about have filled and inebriated with gall and bitterness the church, it's obviously not a literal. It's not a literal filling of the church with demons and everything else that they bring. So we should be careful about taking this too literally.
Piety, the iniquitous design that when the pastor has been struck, the sheep may be scattered. And it goes on and on and on like this. You get Cardinal Manning, you get some of the Lost Salette seers.
Hold on. He skips over.
And it goes on.
Oh yeah, Pope St. Pius X. There is a good reason to fear lest this great perversity may be as it were foretaste, and perhaps the beginning of those evils which are reserved for the last days. This was a private comment that was no different to literally anyone else when they thought that they were living in the last of days. So this is a private comment. We should be careful how we interpret it.
Piety, the iniquitous design that when the pastor has been struck, the sheep may be scattered.
Okay. The quotes by Pope or Venerable Pope Pius XII. I can't find the original quote, but again, this is no different to than when early Christians thought Christ's return was imminent, and it definitely seemed that way since he was Pope during World War II, and then there was the Holocaust, and the Nazis trying to impose their atheistic slash cult of personality around Hitler on the rest of Europe, and so obvious is his take on some of these more apocalyptic passages would have been quite heavily influenced by that. With the benefit of hindsight, we can say no, that was not the last of days, but there is a reason why people in both World War II and World War One, even prompting the formation of the Jehovah's Witnesses, there is a reason why those people thought that they were living in the last of days. We know better now, but they didn't know better back then.
And it goes on and on.
Melanie from mentioning Melanie from Salette. We can just ignore that because she had apostatized long before 1906. I should probably do an in-depth video about Melanie after the Salette apparition, just so you guys know how crazy she went.
On and on like this. You get Cardinal Manning, you get some.
Cardinal Manning. He apparently quotes a number of other theologians without providing his own input. No references are provided for any of these theologians. I've tried looking up what Saint Bellarmine that he quotes here. I tried looking up what Saint Bellarmine and Malvenda say, but I can't find any original references or the context of these quotes. It's his own personal opinion, effectively.
The Lost Salette seers.
Hold on.
It goes on and on and on like this. You get Cardinal Manning, you get some of the Lost Salette seers. You got Yves de Pont from his book.
My computer's a bit.
Book Catholic Prophecy.
Shut up. Sorry, my computer's a bit laggy. Is my thing still recording? Hold on. Okay, yeah, it's still recording. That's good. Catholic Prophecy, Yves de Pont. What did I write about her? Don't trust. She used her own translations of various mystics and prophecies and stuff that she wrote about. She also spliced quotes together from different pages, or at least someone who wrote about it. No, it was her. Okay. She spliced quotes together from different pages and prophecies, such as in the case of Blessed Anne Emmerich, in order to create a specific narrative. So don't trust her writings.
He says some prophecies seem to warrant the inference that the true Catholic Church will disappear completely for a while as an organization. But although disorganized, it will survive in the persons of the faithful members of the clergy and laity who will go underground. When my money's on an actual material chastisement that our leaders seem to be barreling towards, possibly this decade. It just kind of goes on like this.
So it appears that we are finally finished with the Sedevacantist literature, and as you can see, there were a number of, questionable prophecies, questionable interpretations of prophecies, and just flat-out fake prophecies. All to favor the Sedevacantist view, of course.
But this wholesale apostasy has been prophesized. This wholesale prophecy, or apostasy, that I detailed at the beginning of this stream, for those of you who are joining fairly late, where we get this, Italian Catholics reverting to ancient Roman gods, seers, and sorcerers, more of them now than go to Mass in the northern half of Italy, more practitioners of these things than there are priests in the northern half of Italy. We got here because of the permanent aggiornamento, the opening of the windows of the church to the world, to let in some fresh air, and with these new understanding of human dignity. This other nonsense. Anybody actually believe that?
As I said, the reason why the church is in the state that it currently is not because of the fact that we are dialoguing with other religions and non-religious or irreligious, but the fact that we aren't educating ourselves at the same time about Catholic teachings. So when we create an atmosphere where we talk with everyone, but we don't affirm what we believe to each other, then it causes confusions in our beliefs. And when you have malicious forces out there, such as anti-Catholics in governments and other churches, they'll then create various narratives and not ad hominems, strawman arguments about what we believe, which then cause weaker Catholics to apostatize and join whatever atheistic group or other religious heretical sects and stuff. The best approach to deal with the situation would be to both continue dialoguing with other religions, so that other religions can, so that we can try to help bring people from other religions into the church, but to also educate ourselves and our brothers and sisters who are less familiar with the faith, so that they aren't confused by other people who are abusing this dialogue that we have, and are trying to bring them out of the church to them.
That in the 1960s, that the world had a better understanding of human dignity than before? Does anybody actually believe that? Let me know in the live chat if you believe that everything that came afterwards created this world of filth that we live in now. That you believe that stuff.
I feel that he is missing a few things in his interpretation of what happened. A few too many to list here, but we I'm just going to continue.
Yeah, I definitely got a little bit of the angst this morning. That video that recorded that you'll see Saturday definitely left me a little riled up and in a place to be a little riled up and doing this live stream. Harmony reminds us God is sovereign. Stay close to Jesus. In the end, Jesus wins. He does. St. Francis said there would be 2 popes on his, at least as I read it. I've not seen that. I did see St. Francis's warning of a destroyer pope.
And this is how you can tell that there's a lack of research being put into this. So that's actually a pseudepigraphical prophecy attributed to St. Francis of Assisi. I'll probably put a little commentary or description of what the more specifics about this. But what happened was that after St. Francis of Assisi died, a little while later came about a sect of Franciscans, I believe it was. They were known as the Franciscan Spirituals, or something like that. After the formation, or sometime after the formation of the Franciscan Spirituals, or the Joachimites, they were condemned as heretical or something by the Pope at the time. And Joachim, in response, created a pseudepigraphical prophecy in which he talked about a destroyer Pope, which he wanted his followers to apply to the Pope that had condemned them as heretical. So this talk about a destroyer Pope is not only fake from the beginning, but it's also a misapplication of the concept of a destroyer Pope from beyond its historical context.
And it's odd that St. Francis of Assisi gave that, given the name of the alleged pontiff we have now.
Alleged pontiff.
Rich, I'll have a link to this in my show notes at returntotradition.org, probably just before 5, because I'll be ending this live stream shortly. So the papacy will physically leave Rome, like how it moved to Avignon? In theory, probably, but I don't think...
In theory, right. I mean, obviously he's making a bunch of assumptions here to even get to this point, because there's only so many places you can hide in the city of Rome. It's not going to be as easy as when Saint Peter hid in Rome for however many years he did before he was finally martyred. But this entire argument relies on this whole theory of the Pope leaving Rome relies on a literal apostasy of the secular city of Rome, which forces the Pope to leave the Vatican City.
He's going to go back to Avignon. I do think that when the man of sin is...
And I highly doubt it would even go back to Avignon, however you pronounce that, because Rome, France is hardly a Catholic country anymore, and if Italy goes, I'm sure France will have long gone by then. So the Pope will probably not find any refuge in France. I mean, maybe Poland or the Philippines, I don't know, but Yeah, I'm just yeah.
arrived, whoever the Roman pontiff is of the time will have to be in hiding somewhere, and probably won't be in the Vatican, because that'd be the first place they would obviously look. Let's take a look. Any final thoughts in the live chat? Pray for the church in Italy, especially when you see the news I have Saturday. Do you think it's best to avoid diocesan route to the priesthood? If someone is wanting to offer the traditional sacraments, that's probably not your best choice. Any of the traditional priestly fraternities would be a better choice, unless you feel particularly called to the diocesan priesthood. Then you're going to have to figure things out. The chances are that if you were to enter let's say you were accepted into the seminary this year, you were accepted, meaning you'd start next year. The chances that Francis will be there in the 8 years it takes to get through the typical seminary now is slim.
Subtle. Very subtle.
But that doesn't mean you're not going to have Francis II there.
Seriously?
Or that you'll get some moderate who everybody will cheer for the arrival of, except he doesn't undo much of anything that Francis did. So, they opened up the Vatican windows and all the pollution came in. That is exactly correct. Deidre says this is only the start. Things will get much worse. Right. And I focused on Italy because that's where that report.
Actually, what? I'm not sure if I should continue watching this because it's just a bunch of comments and stuff. I mean, I stopped writing comments about the video by this point, and it just goes into detail about his own comments in to the live stream. So to summarize this video, repeatedly relied on flawed sources, whether it be apocryphal editions or non-authenticated messages. No fulfillment of this dark Marian prophecy, because he never focused on a specific one, let alone provided any substantial evidence for any of them. Neo-paganism is a concern, but we are far from an apocalyptic situation, and there is a huge amount of speculation behind his claims, or backing up his claims. When you look at them individually, you begin to see the cracks in some of the conclusions that he reached from them, and not just necessarily just him, because he's following a lot of the interpretation of the Sedevacantist initial interpretation of this. It's just unfortunate that there hasn't been as much original research into this as I would have performed in this case, because he simply looked at the Sedevacantist document and said, well, the Sedevacantists and I both agree on the apostasy in the church, just to various extents, so I'm going to use their evidence and their interpretation until I say that's a bit too much. Whereas when I looked at this video, I looked at every single source individually to see what it is, to see what the quotes said in their respective contexts, and if I couldn't find any context because there was no original source to look at, then I made that clear too. So the Sedevacantists who didn't provide clear enough sourcing for their references, either they made up the source, either they have access to some mysterious secret source or something like that, or they just made it up on the spot. Which I know that some malicious people will do that. For instance, look at Melanie of Salette. She made up that her 1873 version of the Salette message, and most Catholics believe that is the authentic message of Salette, but it really isn't. The 1851 version is the original one, and it was released from the Vatican in the 1999. Unfortunately, this YouTuber has become confused between the 1873 version and thought it was the one released in the 1990s, as he says, but it really isn't. There isn't too much more I can add to this video other than the premise that the video is based upon in terms of the Sedevacantist literature it's not reliable. The quotes are taken out of context, they're apocryphal, they have no referencing to them to find any original sourcing. You should not rely on them, especially because of the fact that they come from Sedevacantists who need the church to be in apostasy to justify their position. As for this YouTuber, it is unfortunate that he believed the prophecies and quotes from the saints, apparent quotes from the saints and apparent prophecies, without doing too much original research of his own. And this is admittedly this is one of the reasons why I like to refute rad trad and sedevacantist content more than modernist content, because the modernists like to look away from the church and at the rest of the world, and there are plenty of ministries like this guy who refute the modernist rubbish. But when it comes to the mistakes that rad trads and sedevacantists make, I prefer to look at those, because I get to look at all of these ancient, all of these prophecy, all of these apparent prophecies and old quotes from the ancient saints and stuff. I enjoy doing that, and I did enjoy when researching this video to refute it. Less so when it came to making it because of all the technical issues that arose. But this video is probably quite long now, so I'm just going to try and end it here and then get around to editing it as soon as I can. So, main gist of this video is that there has been no dark Marian prophecy, let alone prophecies, that have been fulfilled. There is a huge amount of doubt regarding the application of some and origin of some of the sources that were used by the sedevacantists, let alone this YouTuber Return to Tradition, trying to apply that to the situation in Italy, talking about how there is a mass apostasy beginning. And although the situation in Italy is lamentable, it is nowhere near the level it is nowhere near the apocalyptic level that many of the sedevacantists have been trying to push. So, obviously, do pray for the church in Italy, and pray that people stop following apocryphal and unreliable prophecies and references and quotes from the saints, because it's only going to shoot them in the foot when they use these messages, and then someone like me does research and finds out that they're taken out of context or they don't exist. And yeah, so have a good day, all of you. God bless you all. See you in the next video, comrades. Until then.